And I want to thank you for joining me and joining the cast in this really magical communal experience. And I'd like for you to just give yourselves a round of applause for being part of it. So a couple announcements before we begin. One is, it took us 7 years. We finally have a program for the Cranky Festival. I hope you grabbed one. If not, there's some outside during intermission. Take them with you. We have a whole bunch left over. Give them as souvenirs. Give them to friends as presents. All that stuff. Remind yourself, next January, buy tickets early. Cranky Festival. It always sells out. Also, we are taking you on an emotional cranky roller coaster this evening. As you're joining us for this ride, we're asking you to live in the moment, be present together, which means let's turn those cell phones off, let's keep those cameras away and just be with each other as part of this experience. Can we do that? Thank you. The bar, which is currently open right now, in a few seconds the barn doors will be shut in the inside of the theater. But if you need a drink or you need popcorn or some water because there's a popcorn piece stuck in your throat, just go out outside this exit sign. The bar will be open for the duration of the show. During intermission, the barn door will open back up to take care of all of your beverage needs. The restrooms are through that gallery under the green exit sign, and we have 2 visual art galleries right now with really wonderful shows going on. We encourage you during intermission to check those out. We also have 8 apartments where artists live for up to 3-year residency terms. And if you wander those hallways upstairs, you can see some of their work on the walls and get a better idea of all the activities that are happening here at Creative Alliance. So, for the last 3 years, I have made what really is considered, I think by many in the community, as the worst Crankies ever created, to open up the show. And usually that Cranky is about what I just said, you know, where the bathrooms are and don't take any photos, things like that. But in 2020, Creative Alliance is experiencing our 25th anniversary as an organization. And we are going through a lot of changes. We are growing exponentially. There's a lot of amazing things happening here, including we've launched a whole new programming division called CLO, which is really focused on the Latino programming in the neighborhood. And so that's going to be launching this year. There's lots of other exciting events and activities happening. And so I thought I'd give you a sort of a better idea through Cranky as to what's going on here. So are you ready for really, I mean, you know, before I get there, I think you're astounded by the artwork already, right? Many of these artists spend dozens of hours per frame on their Crankies. I invite some friends over for some Greek food, and in about 30 minutes we get this done. So so just be in awe of the majesty that is this Cranky. Here we go. This is a brick. This brick is very happy. Say hi, brick.
Hi, brick.
You see, for the longest time, Brick was just hanging out in Highlandtown, up to no good, nunchucks and his skateboard. And then in 2003, the Creative Alliance moved into the Patterson Theater, which at that time was an empty, one-screen movie house. And Brick was amazed at all the things that were happening. Up to 130 concerts each and every year. There were up to 5,000 students each year getting free after-school arts education enrichment. There were workshops and there were films, and Brick was amazed at all that was going on. One time, Brick even snuck into a burlesque show. Brick. Anyway, Brick was just so thrilled to be involved in this organization. What a time to be the inanimate object. Can we agree with that? It was amazing. But the thing is, Brick was noticing that after all these years, the Creative Alliance was just bursting at the seams. They had so many ideas, and there wasn't any more room left in this building. And he was worried what was going to happen to all these ideas. And then he heard that Creative Alliance had reached out to his friends, Dance Studio Brick and Community Cooking Kitchen Brick, as they went and built their brand new Creativity Center. Hey! You might be asking yourself, there should be more to this Cranky, but there isn't. What is the Creativity Center? Well, as you came into the building, right across the street on Eastern Avenue, we have torn down what was definitely an old haunted bar. And in its place, we are building what's going to be our Creativity Center. It's going to have community cooking space. It's going to have a dance studio. It's going to have classrooms. It's going to have workshop spaces. Our Artesanas Mexicanas program will be situated over there for all of their amazing material culture and performance programs. And so we are in the process of finalizing the fundraising for it, and it's going to be built hopefully in the next year and a half, and it's going to be an amazing new transition for the organization. And if you are interested in joining us for this ride, we are a membership organization. If you are a member, thank you so much. It allows us to do all the work we're doing. If you want to become a member and help us put the final bricks in place for the Creativity Center, talk to Braun with the front desk and she'll tell you all about it. Did you enjoy your first Cranky of the evening? I know, you can leave now, it was so great. But there's really some exceptional work ahead of you. And with that, please put your hands together. Give all you can back. Welcome the 2020 Baltimore CrankieFest.
Welcome to the 2020 Cranky Festival. We're so glad that you're here with us today. First, let's give it up to our fantastic musical trio over there. We have Libby Rodenbow, Tatiana Hargraves, and Alex Bingham, coming to us from North Carolina. This is their first time performing together as this trio for this festival. And we are super, super glad that they have been with us here this weekend. Before we get started, we would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Susquehannock and Piscataway people who had a relationship to this land long before the arrival of settlers. So, Crankies exist under this big umbrella of puppets, and some of you might know me from another puppet theater down in Sowebo called Black Cherry. I run a series of puppet slams there, and to warm up for those, we normally do this little exercise because puppets are their most animated selves when they have a super engaged and animated audience. So, if you could look in front of you and you see your little audience hat there, if you could pick it up and put it on for me. Right now? Yep, Take a moment. I can see all of you who are not doing it. You can take this moment right now to put it on. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Excellent. So, now that we have our hats on, what would your reaction be if something hilarious happened? What about something kind of sad? What about something a little bit confusing? What about something totally mind-blowing? Excellent. I can tell that this is going to be a very good show. So without further ado, we're going to welcome to the stage our first performer. She's very near and dear to my heart. She is the person who first inspired me to start making Crankies. Sometimes known as Jane Appleseed, or the matron saint of Crankies in Baltimore. Performing with Dan Van Allen, we have Katherine Fahey and her new piece, Lost Patterns.
Thank you. We're so happy to be back at the Cranky Festival. This is my partner, Dan Van Allen. I thought I'd just introduce him before he upstaged me with his top hat. So, like Emily said, we have a cranky called Lost Patterns. It's based on the song Lost Patterns by Hazel Dickens. Does anyone know who Hazel Dickens is? Few hands. Okay. So if you don't know, Hazel Dickens lived right here in Baltimore. She was one of the many people who moved here from West Virginia to work in a factory in the 40s. And she and her sister worked in the same factory. And they had grown up in a very musical family. And Hazel continued to play music when she came to Baltimore. And she became very involved in the fight for workers' rights and women's rights. So this song kind of speaks to that. And this Cranky is one of a series of Crankies that I'm making for a documentary by Julia Galanka that we will hopefully be screening here in the coming year. And so it's a very special project to me. And I also wanted to say that I saw Hazel Dickens perform in this room the year before she passed. So it's a very special place to share this. Thank you.
would stay if the living was free. Call me a ride, pour me a drink. What do you mean? I said I would work, I said I would pull, I said I would skip till the barrel was full. It wasn't much fun, so what if I tried to stay. Some people don't mind. Well, that's a good way to be. I'm afraid that
Hazel Dickens passed away in 2006, and I think it's pretty cool that 14 years later she finally has her first music video. This next performer I had the great pleasure of meeting this past summer in Minneapolis at the National Puppetry Festival. He is also coming to us from North Carolina. Please welcome to the stage Jeghetto with his first cranky ever, Internal Racial Depression.
Mic check 1, 2. How y'all doing tonight? That was like half of y'all. How y'all doing tonight? That's what's up. I am LJ, aka Little Jeghetto, and the big guy on top of me is the big Jeghetto. I guess I'm his mini-me. I want to tell y'all a story about internalized racial depression. I picked up on this phrase during the REI training, that's Racial Equity Institute. And when the woman said these 3 words, I just had a flashback of my whole life because I felt this condition, but I could never put a finger on it. So I'm going to tell y'all a story of how it came about. Once upon a rhyme. I start off all my stories like that. Okay, Jeghetto, get the cranky. If anybody's familiar with this skyline, this is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Nobody's from Pittsburgh? All right, thank you. I need a response to keep going. Fun fact, the only other city with more bridges than Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is Venice, Italy. This story takes place in the Monongahela Valley, along the Monongahela River. Duquesne, McKeesport, Rankin, Swissville, Homestead of the Homestead Grays, Afro-Negro baseball. Is this thing on? Y'all still with me? All right. But anyway, the Monongahela River actually flows north. Did y'all know that? No. There's another river that does that, the Nile. This is the town that I was born in, Clairton, Pennsylvania, home of the Clairton Bears, city of prayer. Yeah, I heard a woo. I hear you. Anyway, small kid born to a single mother in a housing project called Blair Heights, across the street from USS Steelworks, the great steel mill. Beginning of what is now called the Rust Belt. Like I said, the steel mill was directly across the street from the housing project that I grew up in. When I was a little kid, we used to come home from church, or I would fall asleep in the car, and I always knew that I was close to home because I could smell the air. You see that black smokestack in the middle? That's where the hot molten steel came through, and they poured the water from the river, the Monongahela River, onto the steel, and that created the steam. When I was a kid, I thought there was a cloud maker. This is it, Blair Heights, directly across the street. When I was a little kid, I had a good friend named Mike. His grandmother's name was Miss Eddie Mae, and she had a candy store across the street from the projects. She used to give us 2-for-1 penny candy. 2 pieces of candy for 1 penny. But if you didn't make it back across the street before 4 o'clock when the mill let out, you were stuck, because when the mill let out, the traffic was so long that they stopped all the traffic lights and they blinked yellow, and you had to wait till all the traffic let out of the mill. Everybody worked in the mill. Imagine being a senior in high school, graduating, and applying for a job that started at $15 to $20 an hour in the 50s and 60s. There's also a baseball park or a softball field where our old heads played softball all the time. Every season, there was a migration of thousands of monarch butterflies. They were everywhere, feeding on the milkweeds that were surrounded the playing field. Funny, it just so happens that our school colors were orange and black. It's like these fresh J's I got on. I know y'all seen them. I'm the oldest of 4, but during this time it was just me and my little brother. We caught the bus everywhere. My mom was just a sweetheart. What she used to do, we used to get a group bus pass. She would pack us lunches, and she would pick a destination somewhere in the city, and we would just catch the bus and go there and spend the whole day catching buses. I loved it. And that's how I actually learned how to get all over the city as a teenager. I love my mom for that. It was good times. This one incident that happened kind of altered my reality of how I felt as a black boy in America. See, we've spent a lot of time in church. There was Sunday service, there was afternoon Sunday service, there was Terry service, there was choir rehearsal. We spent a lot of time in church. My mom loved her some Jesus. But on this particular day, coming from one of those church services, we were coming through, I think it was Jerosburg or Glassport, a poor, impoverished white town. I looked up out the window and noticed these two little white boys racing towards the bus on a bike. I don't know why I paid attention, but I just kept watching as they got closer and closer, and this happened. Yes, I got hit with the N-word. Caught totally off guard and was shocked and confused. I looked up at my mother and asked, why would they say or do something like that? My mother's reply was, just ignore them. My soul wouldn't let me do that. I needed to know why the people were so hated who did nothing. So I started researching and studying, getting knowledge of myself. I studied Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, the Black Panther Party, and they all had something in common. If you fight for justice and equality in this country, this government kills you. Me being a young kid and experienced what I did, I decided that day that I would be assassinated by the U.S. government for fighting for racial justice and equality. And I lived through that through my teen and as a young adult. The two boys had no idea what they did. I guess they thought it was funny, or maybe they really did hate the people they didn't know, but it sparked a love for myself and my people. And I refuse to be looked down on by anyone.
Yes.
But the irony is, those were the dirtiest two little white boys I've ever seen. And I'm dressed up coming from church. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy. Racism makes no sense.
Yes.
So that comes to a conclusion with a poem that I want to leave you with, titled The Loud Silence. The loud silence, the peaceful violence, the beautiful ugliness, the sweet stench of my habitat, infested with clumsy cats who lack agility, staggering through the inner city intoxicated, drunk, reeking of that sweet stench. Irritated by the silent screams, I cover my ears to try to muffle the loud silence, but the silent screams come from within. The beautiful ugliness of my environment, my habitat where bright colors are tinted with shades of gray, smothering the radiance of color. Darkness commits acts of peaceful violence on light, constant rattles of shackles and chains jingling and jangling in my brain. The loud silence, the peaceful violence, the beautiful ugliness, the sweet stench of sidewalks stained with innocent plasma, victims of peaceful violence. As I stand on concrete, surrounded with glass, cigar fillings, and broken glass, scattered about creating a ghetto masterpiece, I look up into the sky and scream at the top of my lungs, a scream of the loudest silence, tired of the peaceful violence, the beautiful ugliness, the sweet stench of my environment, my habitat. Thank you.
hole in the newborn heart that allowed the blood to mix in utero. It slowly closes in the first few days the baby breathes air. 70 years ago, I would have had a blue baby, mostly normal at birth and dead 2 days later. My baby was safe while inside of me, but I would have to let it go into the breathing world eventually. Boom. I am destroyed. For the next 4 months, I sank deep, deep into sad waters. This was a strange 4 months. I carried this crazy story inside of me, but ostensibly this pregnancy was fine. Normal risk, looked normal. And just like with my first baby, we did not find out about the sex growing in there. Strangers love to know about the genitals. And they would ask me, is it a boy or a girl? I don't know, I'd say. Oh, that's great, they'd say. The old-fashioned way. And then they'd say the most harmless thing in the world. Just as long as it's healthy, right? And fantasy me would say, like a joke, nope, not that either. But guess what doesn't ever really land? A joke that's not really a joke about open heart surgery on a newborn. That baby you made wrong. But I came back up out of the water because I had to. This is motherhood, coming up not because you are ready, but because there is no other choice. The day comes, the middle of the earth pulls. I open up and let her go. She is here. And now they must break open the walnut that is her heart, cut and sew it back together. I continue to show up. That's what I'm supposed to do. The only way through it is through it. We go through it. They warn you about it, but when it does go backwards, there is no preparation that can help, that can stop you from crying all day long. But she does start moving forward again, and then wires come out and machines leave the room. I see her face. 8 days after surgery, she is a baby back in my arms, and she is ready to go home. It all starts to feel normal. Medications stop, precautions end. I can pick her up under her arms. She can lie on her belly. We are just here. They told us she may only ever need one surgery, and I begin to believe that she is just normal. We are just normal, newborn and mother. They fixed her heart, and now she's a regular baby. We go back for a cardiology appointment, and they see a narrowing valve. Boom, I'm destroyed. It is fairly common. Boom. I must face some truths. She does not have a normal heart. She never will. Her heart was broken and sewn back together, and now there is scar tissue. Her heart mimics a normal heart, untouched in a newborn, but hers has been touched, and it reacts to that. She might need another surgery. Someday, maybe, maybe not, maybe something less, maybe nothing, maybe the whole thing over again. When? Not sure. Now and then there is a problem that cannot be fixed. Motherhood is a complicated grief. I realized that I had actually relied completely on the idea that she would have one heart surgery and then be fine. But that was just one of the possibilities. And now so many others fell onto the path. Boom. I was destroyed again. Hearts are important, and hers is broken. She has a chronic disease. With a chronic disease, everything is fine until it is not. I searched for something to help me piece myself back together again. I yearned for someone else's wisdom because I was out. And I did find an eerie solace. It was the idea that you will lose everything and everyone you love. That is it. We were not special. By having children, I had opened myself up to losing them. This is the real shit. I realized that everyone will die, and then I was no longer so sad. The reality is that I could lose them. It's just that because of her heart, I was facing it at the same moment I was also facing her birth. But I may lose my children. It could be a car crash, an illness, a freak event, a natural catastrophe, a suicide, an overdose, a misstep, miscommunication, a bad call, or bad timing. but she will be here until she is not, no matter how perfect or broken her heart may be. I can fight for her, I can ask questions, search endlessly for the right doctor or the right medicine, but the only way I can actually live is to surrender to the path, even when it hurts. Because right at this moment, we are both here, broken-hearted and alive, and just that is enough.
Mm-hmm.
Josh did warn you at the top of the show that this would be a roller coaster of emotions. Some stories, and this story especially, really put the tears in Puppeteer. Our next performer comes to us all the way from Puerto Rico, where she is known for her exceptionally stunning mask work. Please welcome to the stage Deborah Hunt with her piece, Speak of the Devil.
woke up this morning, laying face down on the floor. Yes, I woke up this morning, laying face down on the floor. You know I didn't have no place to go. Guess I'm going down to the river, sit right there on the ground. I'm going down to the river, I'll sit right there on the ground. I'll let the weight of the water wash my trouble down.
Adelaide, are we ready? Excellent. I would like to introduce you all to the machine. An attempt at reworlding. An attempt at staying with the natural cultural multi-species trouble here on Earth. Adelaide, fire her up. By golly, I think it's working.
Never thought we'd make it this far, Professor.
Neither did I. But let us begin. Early on a Sunday morning in September of 2012, a man slowly fell from the sky far above a suburban neighborhood west of London. His name was unknown, his origins a mystery, his soul lost.
What does it mean to be lost?
I think lostness is mostly forgetting to remember.
Oh.
Do you remember Pangea? One big landmass lost in one big ocean. Until the tectonic plates decided to stretch their legs and shift, and slowly but surely continents began their individual existence. Remember, they are still drifting, at a rate so slow we can only dream of it. So much land still lost at sea. But things kept moving, changing, and adapting. And some things never even shook free of their liking for lostness, like drift seeds. They adapted themselves for long-distance dispersal by water, sometimes drifting thousands of miles over ocean currents, dreaming of a small patch of earth to call their own. They turned into the leggy-rooted tea mangrove and the beautiful blossoms of the blue marble tree. How else do you think coconuts came to be on every desert island? And when the ancient forest at the center of that land split, the same species ended up on 4 different hemispheres. And the ongoingness of time and transition transformed these plants into the ones we know today. And so Tennessee mountain laurel dreams of her long-lost avocado sibling. And this type of movement, this type of evolution continues beneath everything, though the fabric of existence seems to unravel at the same rate, leaving us like Theseus, attempting to navigate the labyrinth with a single thread. Do you know that on average a person spends 2 months of their life looking for lost and misplaced items? How much longer do you think we spend on the intangible things, casting our nets into the vast nothing? Or is it everything? Waiting on some kind of sign or answer? At what point is one compelled into action? In 1847, a man named Henderson Lulling felt the forward compulsion of something missing. So he decided to bring fruit trees west. There was no talk of conservation ecology or invasive species, just fertile ground ripe for planting. And so he packed up his wife and 8 children and 700 tiny trees onto covered wagons. And together they experienced the excitement and the dread of entering the unknown. But now, imagine a strange caravan of strange peoples cutting across your home. And imagine the fear surrounding what might be contained in those wagons. And imagine your surprise at discovering 700 tiny, delicate seedlings just big enough for their first true leaves, awaiting the rich soil of the Willamette Valley. Wouldn't you also think these strangers imbued with some otherworldly spiritual force to care so lovingly for so many leafy lives? How is it that at times it is so hard to see? That all of our fates are so inextricably tied together? A multi-species muddle here and now, trying to grapple with that unraveling because we are in and of the fabric of undoing. Have you seen the beautiful maps of the wilderness corridors, created to track the migration of animals the climate crisis has spurred? Have you compared it to the migration of peoples? Have you seen how it looks like the tendrils of mycelial connection, or the inner workings of our very own beating hearts? Do you think that this is merely coincidence? What if life is an amalgam of becoming of and with and for others? Have you heard the story of how in 2009, a Russian man went to the hospital because he began to cough up blood? And how when the doctors went to operate on the cancer, they found a 2-inch long fir tree growing in his lungs? Where else was it to grow? When only 200 miles away, the Mayak chemical plant, responsible for 2 of the biggest nuclear disasters since Fukushima and Chernobyl, had been poisoning the surrounding area for decades. Between the bronchioles and alveoli of a poor man's lungs was the safest place. We need each other, you see. All of us ancient siblings, like the mountain laurel and the avocado. From the tiniest water bear bouncing over moss, to the large-scale structures of the universe, too big to yet even comprehend. The wordless voice of longing resonates within us all. The longing to continue, to participate in the ongoingness of the world despite the thoughtlessness practice of business as usual. And sometimes it's all I can do to keep from feeling so lost and crying in my car on the way to buy groceries. And yet, when I return, I meet an old woman named Bernadette struggling with her bags. And as I help her with them, I notice that she's wearing a bracelet with the letters ABLR. And I ask her what it means. She says that her husband used to say it all the time. Ask, believe, let go, receive. Isn't the want to believe it could be so simple a beautiful thing? And suddenly I feel a little bit less lost and a little bit more able to stay with the trouble. You see, lostness is a tricky thing to navigate. It is both a wanted and unwanted part of the unraveling.
But what happened to the man who fell from the sky?
Ah, yes, him, the poor lost soul. He was a refugee from Angola. He fled his environmentally ravaged, war-torn country in the hope of something better, and fell from the wheel well of the plane as the landing gear opened. But what if we could rewrite the ending? And as he fell, his body turned into the Sky Woman of the Huron and the Iroquois. And geese flew up to catch her. And brought her down to our struggling multi-species muddle. And when she landed, she brought with her looks like there's enough for everyone to have a piece.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. It is beautiful. It's hard to see right now because it's under a lot of snow.
It's okay.
It's okay. I like your attitude. I'm going to play you this instrumental that I wrote for my darling Rosa, who couldn't be here today because she doesn't love me. Just kidding, just kidding. This is an instrumental, but it's also a sing-along. There's one line at the end, it's Woo Rosa, it's the name of the song.
have seen perform last Cranky Festival on the very stage that I am standing on as a musical performer. But this year, she has her very own, very first Cranky to debut here. Please, oh, she's also a muralist in town and also in the band that was here last year called Tongue in Cheek. Let us welcome Bridget Cimino with her wonderful piece, It Must Be Him.
What's done is done. I tell myself, don't be a fool. Play the field, have a lot of fun. It's easy when you play it cool. I tell myself, don't be a chump. Who cares? Let him stay away. That's when the phone rings and I jump. As I grab the phone, I say, let it please be him. Oh dear God, it must be him. It must be him, or I shall die. Or I shall die. Oh, hello, hello, my dear God, it must be him. But it's not him, and then I die. That's when I die. After a while, I'm myself again. I pick the pieces off the floor. I put my heart back on a shelf again. He'll never hurt me anymore. I'm not some puppet on a string. I'll find somebody else someday. That's when the phone rings. And once again, I start to pray. Let it please be him. Oh dear God, it must be him. It must be him, or I shall die. It could have been tremendous.
They don't tell you who you're gonna follow. Big black band came into town. There weren't no other black folks around. You know, they stuck around with nothing to lose. Got him a job shining on those town folks' shoes. have been alright. So that sheriff came into town one Friday night, walked on over to Ben. This is what he said. Get out of town, boy, before I bust your head. That sheriff kept giving Ben a whole lot of grief. Told everyone in town that Ben was a thief, a big black man. I don't know how you eat. No one in town would even trust you with the shoes on their feet. See, Big Black Benny was the biggest man in town. He could have put that sheriff 6 feet in that ground, but instead he smiled. And he swallowed his pride. Left town walking down that old riverside. Summer came. Fall came again. No one remembered too much about Big Black Ben till one Friday night. Sheriff came back into town, looking to find what could not be found. He looked up high, looked down low, yelling, Big Black Ben, where did you go? Well, it seems so Ben left his mark in the middle of the night. Sheriff's wife had a baby, but the baby wasn't white. Thank you.
Every one of them will have a right to our roads and highways? Do cars have rights? Is that like how corporations have rights? Or is it just the people driving the cars who have rights? Right? Right. Of way. Don't say we didn't warn you. It is 2020, and what we say now is more and more pollution, more asthma, more concrete, more runoff, more emissions, more carbon, more demolition, less species, more petroleum, more drilling, more broken treaties, more wars fought on this land and overseas in order to fuel the American dream of steam, of supremacy, of clean air, grass green. Look at all that space of neighbors who justify the desire to escape. People still rationalize roads as fulfilling this fantasy, but let's consider scale for a starter. Zoning for small, severed white boxes conflicts with the common good in a city in dire need of affordable housing. It is 1792, and residents are at odds with its city planning like Baltimore at odds with Annapolis when it got its first charter. For we were not founded by idealists looking to barter, but by overlords protecting their southern plantations from a growing city of freed blacks with skills and ships and grain and motivation to take back the power that was denied for a century. No wonder representation was considered crazy until one of the largest cities in the country was given just 2 seats in a house of 80. Jump to 1949, and my father is born on Fleet Street in Fells Point in a home with no indoor plumbing or heating, with 50 children on one block who play stickball in the alleys. His living room was outside the front door. Life spread into the streets, serving people before cars, before giant companies like GM took over the electric streetcar system. I hear a call for complete streets, for electric motors. I say, add complete light rail, make it multimodal. We are not reinventing the wheel. We are just revivalists, repeating old cycles with millennial cyclists. Auto lobbyists leveraged our obsession with safety and our precious babies getting hit by speeding cars. Look both ways before crossing the street is a recent lesson. What we should have said then was, look both ways before our city gets divided by a massive highway. It is 2008. It took me forever to get my license. To my brother, 10 years older, a car was still a symbol of empowerment, individuality, finding friends, masculinity. The internal combustion car that had to be coaxed and muscled to life, with its loops and explosions and thrusting pistons. I wanted none of it. Ironically, my first car was a 1988 blue Toyota pickup truck, inherited from a stepfather named Butch. Obama just won the presidency, and I finished my first year of art school, and I have a car, and I have hope, and I decide to head to Chicago. I get the first taste of life with connected public transit, the L, swiping through the city over our heads like the movie Metropolis, only this is real, and I feel both lost and free without a car. How many hours of my life I got back from sitting, thinking, drawing, reading, hours to be with your family, to be home, in bed, to get to your second job, to be with friends. How is it that insurance companies can still openly discriminate against single women? It's only been since 2015 that I could even consider marriage. Not that it's anywhere near the top of my to-do list. How can I consider having a family in this world? Look both ways before crossing the street doesn't cut it anymore. Swing back to 1987, and there's a brass band playing at the grand opening of the extension of the Baltimore Metro to Owings Mills, designed to bring county folks to the city to shop at the Inner Harbor. How many here have used Metro in the last year? 5? 10? The Metro system was originally envisioned as 6 rapid transit lines radiating from a central city loop 71 miles long. By 1971, it was cut to 28. When they started building in 1983, there were 7.6 miles left. A recent study from Harvard experts found the single strongest factor affecting the odds of a child escaping poverty isn't the test scores, it's the percentage of workers in that child's neighborhood who have long commute times. I live in Hamden, 5 minutes from my job by car, 15 by bike, 25 by bus and light rail. There are 3 different ways I can access public transit within a 2-minute walk from my house. My car cost more than my rent, and yet, what am I doing? Why does it still feel so hard to get around without a car? Who here doesn't use a car as the primary way to get around? Hamden missed blockbusting, along with my father's neighborhood near Fells Point. If they beat out the Homeowners Loan Corporation scheme, they just had to wait a few years to see the value of their homes increase, to the point they couldn't afford rent or taxes, and owners were selling and joining the masses. When we think of white flight, the proper name is the 1965 Federal Aid Highway Act, and the FDA subsidized mortgage policies in white-only burbs. But in Baltimore, we were ahead of the game. It is 1891, and we are both a champion of the electric streetcar and racial covenants. The Great Migration is adding to a relatively large number of African Americans. Streetcars couldn't take you to the true countryside, but they could shuttle down Euro-modeled garden mansions just outside the city line. We started leaving far before the official red line. It used to be a bitch to cross town west-east, your father says. There's a lot less people now, so traffic calms down. But there's no jobs on the east side like back in the day. Who's gonna ride the rail line when no one's in the streets? But they are in the streets, I say. It is April 27th, 2015, and I am at my grandmother's house in Hamilton folding laundry, and across town more than 15 buses are stalled at Mondawmin Mall, demanding children get off and wait in crowded parking lots to face rows of cops in riot gear like that movie 1984, only this is real. My friend took home terrified students that day because that was the only way to get home. She says the uprising was started by a shutdown of transportation. I say yes. But put the start date closer to Emancipation Proclamation, a false hope of citizenship that is still owed by this nation. It is 1994, and we are packing up the beige Honda minivan for the final trip. My parents bought the duplex house in Hamilton with my grandmother in 1989 so she could help with childcare. The sun heats the tan leather and burns my pink skin so hot I have to sit, stuck to a towel, skin dripped. What I didn't know then was they had always intended to leave. They say all kids play together until 5 years old, and then white families leave for the county to attend better schools. Goodbye. I was looking out for your best interest, your father says. These schools were rough. That's why growing up we went to Catholic school, but no one does that anymore. Rough, like how funding left with your property taxes, and families who stayed bore the burden. In 2003, my dad moved back into his ex-mother-in-law's house, and I came with him on weekends. He played Car Talk and Prairie Home Companion and the Irish Hour religiously. My favorite, though, was Les Mis. My father loves to sing. As a child standing next to him at church, I would inch away further, pretending I was not related to this man. But I've grown to appreciate his tenor. It came in hand one fall day in Fells Point when my father was 21. It's 1970, and my father is sitting next to Barbara Mikulski and Gloria All, singing at City Council President Schaefer about building a highway from I-70 in the west, through downtown, and along the water to the east, what we now call the Highway to Nowhere. My father says, the highway was scheduled to go through Thames Street, all the way up to Lancaster, and basically destroy the neighborhoods, Little Italy, Fells Point, Canton. This was before you could see the water, when there were walls of smoking brick towers of workers at its edge, before the inner harbor, later a different kind of tower blocking access. Anyway, he says, it was a great song. I played it once an hour at the Fells Point Fun Festival and always got a lot of applause.
Someday, the city life is so bucolic, and so do I, and so do I. Some think Fells Point was made for fun and frolic, and so do I, and so do I. But I hate to hear of roads a building, they leave a scar, they leave a scar. This land has seen 200 years of living, but now the car, but now the car. Fells Point, who will save you now? 8 lanes of concrete will bury you in hell. If you believe in where my friends find me soon no more.
Baltimore, Harlem Park, who could have saved you then? 8 lanes of concrete did bury you in hell. Funiculi, funicula, the west side lost 1,000 homes. The highway didn't kill Freddie Gray, but it left a poisoned wound. They used eminent domain and just took them over like they did to a couple hundred on the east side, is what he says when I ask, what happened? You have a year to move out, the decision is done, here's $5,000 for the house. Only they did it on Franklin Mulberry on the west side 5 years earlier. The fight against the expressway led to a lot of positive stuff in southeast Baltimore, my father adds. The Society for the Preservation of Fells Point and Fed Hill put a lot of money and lawyers to file a lawsuit. They stopped it from turning into a slum. The word slum burns my ears, the same one Robert Moses fed to us so often it became known as white roads through black bedrooms. In southeast Baltimore, fighting the road was a beginning, not an end. What it was called then was a resurgence of ethnic power. Polish, Italian, Irish, Greek, Lithuanian festivals, children of American parents who ignored their heritage for generations to assimilate into whiteness finally understood that's where their rallying call echoed, into the City Hall chambers of immigrant identity, spurred by the civil rights freedom movement, reclaiming a narrative that didn't belong to them indefinitely. This kind of defiance made new liberals, hoping to avoid contradiction between community preservation and racial inclusion, silent. When your leader argues that groups should organize in their separate spheres racially and only collaborate when issues overlap, the answer should be, they will always overlap. The answer should be, you do not fix a neighborhood first and society second without leaving others behind. It is 1966, and the day is sun-drip beautiful, like anything could happen skies, like young people have agency and promise in their eyes. And my father is about to graduate high school, and across town, city council is considering tearing down 880 houses through the 77% owner-occupied Harlem Park. While the federal government used highway expansion as a moral method to dissolve the unwanted, this neighborhood was strong. The Voting Rights Act had just passed, and my father thinks maybe this will give black people the legal recourse needed to stop this road. Wrong. It is June 25th, 2015, and Maryland's newly elected governor just announced the cancellation of the shovel-ready east-west third rail line, studied in planning documents since the 1960s, going from Social Security in Woodlawn on the west side to Bayview on the east side, bringing 10,000 jobs and rapid commute times. Remember, the #1 leading cause of poverty, we call it the Red Line. Slated to become the transit successor of the aborted east-west highway to nowhere, and one decision made by a man that this city did not elect, the opportunity to give that scar of concrete any purpose, evaporated, and with it the promise of access and investment along rail stations. Samuel Jordan, director of the Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, was reading the Baltimore Sun, stunned, seeing 13 years of planning with a coalition of 19 community groups along each station vanish, gone. As if Annapolis was pulling us back to 1792, but the wealthy landowners and businessmen were just giving us a preview of more to come. You'd think they'd understand by now the price fully paid. The gift from white supremacy is underdevelopment for everyone. Samuel says, society's prosperity, its ability to elevate its base, is partially measured by the ability to circulate without restrictions, to live with a level of freedom no matter your income. That's where its ideas, its energy, its contacts, its fertility comes from. Baltimore is in need of its engine. It is the circulatory system that keeps the entire structure alive. We aren't conscious of having to pump blood through our veins. We shouldn't have to think about public transit being available and efficient for everyone. It is the breath that gives us life. With all our history, all the decisions made by individuals who did not have to live with those choices, we have a right to maintain control over our public transit. The state is suffocating our city. We have a vision for a reconnected society. Let us breathe.
It's called Rosie's Coming Home, and it goes just like this. Rosie's coming home, finally. She's been gone too long. Rosie's coming home. Well, I don't know just where she been, but I'll be so happy when she's home again. I don't know what she's been doing, but when she's gone, my life's in ruin. Her smile will make you lose your breath. She's so pretty, it'll kill you to death. That's my Rosie, and she's coming home. All right, let's go. Rosie's coming home, finally. She's been gone too long. Rosie, she's coming home. She disappears for weeks at a time. Always takes a shovel and lime. You can hide in the dark, but all too soon she'll hunt you down by the light of the moon. Like a butterfly from a caterpillar, when you find out she's a highway killer. That's my Rosie. She's coming home. All right. One time. Rosie is coming home. Finally, she's been gone too long. Rosie, she's coming home. Sometimes poison, sometimes nice, sometimes it's a gun that'll end your life. It don't matter if the shadows scream, cause your nightmare's a beautiful dream. They'll find your face down the bud, but she's so cute when she's covered in blood. That's my Rosie. She's coming home. All right. Couple of drifters, couple of cops, couple of owners of a couple of shops. Too many to list them all, but they'll turn up by the end of the fall. Shots from afar and she never missed them. So close with a knife she could have kissed them. Notches on her belt is how she lists them. And when she gets home, it's out of her system. But whatever the case may be, I'm sweet on her, she's sweet on me. That's my Rosie, and she's coming home. Here we go.
Based out of Tacoma Park, Maryland, please welcome Alex and Olmsted with their new piece, Umwelt.
1809, the biologist Jakob von Uexküll introduced the concept of Umwelt. He wanted to address a simple phenomenon that is often overlooked, that different species perceive the world differently.
The bloodhound's world is full of three-dimensional smells. His nose houses 200 million scent receptors, 40 times that of a human.
The blind and deaf tick climbs to the top of a blade of grass in the hopes that she may catch a waft of butyric acid emitted from mammalian skin.
Honeybees employ ultraviolet signals. Rattlesnakes can perceive infrared.
Umwelt is a humble assertion that humanity's worldview is limited. By imagining our surroundings in the eyes of another organism, we open ourselves up to more discovery.
Echolocation was discovered only because someone stopped and asked themselves, what is it like to be a bat?
In a small studio apartment at the outskirts of the city, Herman sits at his kitchen table alone.
Perhaps it was his recent unemployment. Perhaps it was his fear of death. Or perhaps it was just a sudden desire to run naked in a field screaming. Regardless, Herman had the thought, I wish I were an animal. I want to smell the grass and the wind without having to worry about the meaning of life. How much simpler it would be if I were an animal.
This is not a new thought. To want to become an animal is normal. Historically speaking, it's almost odder not to want to become one. In the Schubert caves in France, there is a 30,000-year-old cave painting of a human with the head of a bison.
Herman decided he would become a goat. But how? Humans and goats are built differently. Not only are humans bipedal and goats quadrupedal, but goats have stronger front legs and more flexible musculature that prevent injury when they gallop and lunge. Plus, the faces are quite different. A goat-shaped helmet and goat prosthetics will suffice.
Fully transformed, Herman made his way to the mountains. other's company. One night as they lay in the green pasture looking at the stars, Herman felt compelled to confess his true identity.
My darling, he said, I have not been completely honest with you.
Whatever do you mean? She replied.
I am indeed not a goat from the northern mountain, as I led you to believe.
You are from the Southern Valley?
No, my darling. This may come as a shock to you, but I am, in fact, a human male. I needed to know what it was like to experience the world through the eyes of another animal.
You mean Umwelt?
Yes, exactly.
I too have had curiosities of this kind. I have oft dreamed what it would be like to be a caterpillar inching along a leaf, or to splash furtively in the brook like an otter, or even, she added sheepishly, to walk bipedally as a human female.
The two rushed from their mountain pasture towards the city. It was just before daybreak when they reached the provincial town nearby, and, quiet as they could, stole a set of women's clothes from the nearby clothesline. Now, for the finishing touch, a bit of crushed holly berry to rouge your lips. Oh, perfect, Herman said. Come, I have so much to show you. Here is the market where we get our food. We can use the self-checkout line to avoid talking with the cashier. Here is the gym where you can run on the treadmill as fast as you like. Here is the library where you can get on free Wi-Fi and use the bathroom. They spent many long days together in the city. One night, as they lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the goat was compelled to share her true feelings.
I've enjoyed my time with you. I appreciate being able to see the world through your eyes. But I'm going to be honest with you. This is not my world. I'm sorry, said the goat. She gave him a kiss on the cheek and walked out the door.
The next morning, Herman sat at his kitchen table once more. A warm cup of tea nearby, he thought back on the last 2 months. Even though it was over, he had a lasting appreciation for his time immersed in nature and a newfound perspective on his place in the universe. Wait a second, Herman thought. I'm being ridiculous. My darling, Herman shouted.
Herman, this is not a good idea.
Oh, please, I need to say this. My days with you in the pasture were some of the happiest days of my life. I understand that living away from your home and family is difficult. It's difficult for me too. But darling...
Don't say it.
I love you. That's right, I love you. And if you ever loved me, then we owe it to each other to try and make this crazy thing work. What do you say?
What can I say but...
And from that moment forward, they spent half their time in the pasture and the other half in the city. And they lived happily ever after.
That was indeed our last Cranky performance, but do y'all want to hear one more song? Yeah! All right.
Long yonder comes Rosie. When the world do you know? By the way she wore her apron and the clothes she wore, umbrella on her shoulder, piece of paper in her hand. She come to see the governor.
Please make sure to come up to us and say hi after the show. We'll see you all next January.